A lot of Braves fans here, Chipper.
I like it. I like all these Braves hats here. It's nice. They pay y'all to wear those?
No. I don't think so. I get the feeling they're following you.
I hear you.
Well, thanks for coming. Appreciate it. The book is fantastic. Ballplayer. Hope everybody gets a chance to read it soon. It's really good. First, want to jump into, where you start the book with your father. And, obviously he was a big Mickey Mantle fan. That's one of the reasons you switch-hitted. And then also, just the impact he had on you as well as both your parents off the field.
Yeah, it's not just Dad. It was a joint effort with my parents, moms and pops. My mother's a professional equestrian, so she's a very athletic woman in her own right, and she really kind of gave me the swag growing up. The mental toughness. When I walk up to the plate, she said, "I want you to think that you're the best player on the field." And they've been going at it 47 years strong now, 48 years in June. So not many people can say that. In a world where we have so many single parents, I consider myself very lucky to have had them, together and in my corner for so long. But yeah, Dad was the guy. I mean, we were always doing something in and around the baseball field. During football season, we played football, we played basketball, even ran a little track. But we always knew where our bread was buttered, come to springtime. And there's a little more intensity in our preparation for baseball season than, some of the other sports. And he was right there in my corner the whole way.
Well, one of the stories you tell early on is the story, you go 6 for 6 in a Little League game. You drive it home, both your parents in the car. You're so excited. You're fired up, and they're talking about, Chipper, when you get home, you got to mow the lawn.
Yeah, it was, I had my daily chores, and I think that was part of the discipline involved with both of them. You can go out and go 6 for 6. Think about how big your head would be if you went out and went 6 for 6. You want to keep playing. You want to go hang out with your friends. Nah, you got to go cut the grass, take out the trash. That was just their little way of saying, you know what, that's baseball. This is everyday life. That life doesn't affect this life. You still got to do the things that we ask of you on a daily basis.
So you start to progress. By the time you reach, 16, 17, you talk about scouts coming, 5, 10, eventually 50. You also were the leading receiver in the state for football, so you have scouts coming to football practice. What kind of pressure and how did you start to manage when all of a sudden you're at a practice and you got 40 to 50 scouts, not even at a game?
Well, it was difficult because I was having to do most of it on my own. After my freshman year in my hometown of Pearson, Florida, I transferred to Jacksonville Bowles High School. So I was 3 hours of homework. I was having to deal with college scouts, pro scouts, and pretty much having to do it by myself. Mom and Dad weren't there. So it was tough sledding for a while. I had some fun with it for a while, but I think by the end of the process, meaning the end of my senior year, I was just about to get drafted. I was about at wit's end, and there were times, and I went through some stories, during the draft process where, my dad and I got into a couple of arguments, and I, said some things I probably shouldn't have, but that was just the stress of it, kind of getting to an 18-year-old, 17, 18-year-old kid, who really doesn't know all that much about life outside of his dorm room at Jacksonville Bowles High School.
Yeah, and I remember you talking about American Legion ball, and you were playing with Pearson, and they didn't know some of the guys in Jacksonville, but you were in a game, and you knew all these guys, and you knew that they had high D1 guys that were getting drafted, and you talk about being from Podunk, Pearson, and you have all these guys on your team who most of them aren't going to play in college, but it meant a lot to you because you were playing against guys you knew.
Yeah, and I think American Legion really gave me the opportunity to kind of, for all the kids in my area where I grew up, to kind of strut their stuff against some of the Jacksonville guys, the guys that I played with or against during high school. And there was nothing more gratifying than coming back home for DeLand Post 6 and playing some of those Jacksonville 88, Jacksonville 283 posts up there and all those kids in Jacksonville, and then us beating them, and they're like, man, there's some good players down there. I think, we had a couple of guys signed D1, but where I'm from, it's a blue-collar town. Most people that don't know where I'm from Pearson, Florida, and it is self-proclaimed fern capital of the world. So if you buy some flowers for your significant other, chances are the decorative greens that are in that flower arrangement came from my hometown. So it's a huge business. Most of the time when kids graduate from high school in my hometown, they go into the family business. My parents used it as, the complete 180. Whenever I got in trouble, out in the fernery I went. I had to weed, I had to cut fern, I had to fertilize, do all this stuff that I didn't really like doing, quite honestly. I was in the fern business for about 5 minutes before I said, you know what? This is not what I want to do with the rest of my life.
Did that motivate you to be even more hardworking and to be more aggressive toward baseball?
I think so. I mean, if I'd have been a piano player, it would have motivated me to do that. It just so happens that, the good Lord gave me a wealth of talent and the desire to not be average, and I thank him every day for that. Yeah.
You talk about in the book, this is one of my favorite stories, you are getting ready for prom in bowls, I believe, and you're getting ready to go out, and Todd Van Poppel was the #1 player in the country.
Correct.
Pitcher, everybody had him going #1. He basically says he doesn't want to sign, right? So all of a sudden, you find out that you could be #1. Your dad calls you, and he says, Chipper, I need you to drive to Daytona Beach, which I'm not sure, that's not very close.
It's probably 2 hours.
Yeah.
It's a 2-hour drive.
Get in the car.
Yeah.
The Braves are here. They want to talk to you about being #1 pick.
Yeah, all Dad had to say was the Braves are in town and they're interested in making you the #1 pick, and prom went out the window. And I don't.
Your date, by the way.
my prom date hasn't spoken to me since. No, but she understood. It was the most important day of my life. It was something that I had worked my entire life for, and now I was being rewarded with the opportunity to do something that only a handful of people up to that point have been able to say, and that's I was the #1 pick in the entire country in the amateur draft, and it was something that I wanted. The Atlanta Braves, I'm a Southern kid. The Atlanta Braves at that time were the only team in the South. All their minor league teams were in the South. So it was very appealing to me to stay in the Southeast. And obviously, being as brash as I was back then, I figured, as bad as the Braves were, I can change things, Fortunately for me, the good time started before I got there, and we were able to continue it throughout my stay there.
Maybe rewind a tad, because you didn't have an agent. And I love the story. You sit down with Scott Boras, who was starting to develop as a big-time agent. Now he's one of the biggest agents in the world. And you walked out of that meeting because, A, you didn't like the way he was talking, and B, you felt like he had told you you're going to hit 270 and win Gold Gloves, and you're like, I'm not that good of a fielder. I'm gonna hit 270. So you walked out of the meeting.
I did walk out of the meeting. It was something. Looking back, I probably should have just humored him and stayed. But again, that was one of those situations where I was going through a lot of agent interviews. It became very apparent to me within the first 5, 10, 15 minutes that I was in the room that Scott and I just weren't going to mesh, and there's nothing wrong with that. You're not going to please everybody. His methods didn't necessarily suit mine and my family's view of how we wanted to be represented. There's no ill will. There's no hard feelings. I told the story. I'm sure Scott's probably not real happy with the way the story was told in the book, but you know what? You can't please everybody. I did walk out, and looking back, I probably could have handled it differently, but, that's what happens when you're stressed and frustrated. Sometimes you do things that...
And 18.
And 18, yeah. So not the most mature guy in the world.
So let's go 96 World Series. You guys won 95.
Yep.
96, though, to me, is almost more intriguing because you get to play in New York. And Mickey Mantle, all the Joe DiMaggio, Babe Ruth, all the greatest players. And I love the story you tell when you're in the field and you won game 1, I think 12-1, you dominated the game, but you didn't realize because you were so focused that people were throwing stuff at you the whole game until finally you realized they were throwing people out of the game, out of the stadium. That was like your first welcome to New York moment.
Yeah, I mean, the whole Yankee Stadium process was just it was a whirlwind for me. I remember walking into the stadium and thinking how many unbelievable players walk down these halls, and here I am about to play in a World Series in this stadium. And I mean, I had played in Shea Stadium a few times, but Yankee Stadium, man, that was up there on a pedestal, especially for my dad, being the Mickey Mantle fan that he was. I can remember standing out there. It was a pitch and change, middle of the game, and every once in a while, you take a moment to just kind of look around. I'm so focused when I'm inside the lines, but it took a second to just kind of take in the surroundings. And I looked on the ground, and I had about $5 in change around me at third base. Quarters, nickels, dimes, people throwing every pack of gum out behind third base. I went over and caught a pop-up behind third base, and as it's coming down, a pack of gum goes flying, in between me and the ball, and that guy got thrown out. But it's stuff like that makes playing in New York. I mean, you really got to be focused when you step between the lines in New York, because there's 40, 45, 50,000 people in the stands that are doing everything they can possibly do to try and take you out of your game.
Despite the distractions, did you at all find it endearing that they were so passionate, or no?
100%. I mean, Atlanta, great crowd base, but Atlanta's more of a laid-back town, and up here they are fanatical, and it's always a little more fun up here, because that if you make a right turn at first base and come back to the dugout instead of the left hand that you're supposed to, they're going to let you hear about it. They're going to let you hear about it.
That's awesome. So you're very open in the book, and I think it's really admirable that you were. You didn't have to be. But the next couple of seasons, you start to talk about some of the issues you were having off the field, Chipper. Mm-hmm. And you specifically mentioned Karen, your first wife, mm-hmm. and that stuff really, basically everything really went awry. And I was just wondering if you could take us through it, and how you learned from it, because obviously it was a very trying experience.
Well, in the book, I try and touch on some places in my life, some dark places, obviously some bright spots. But I think it's important, if you're gonna write a book like this, you've gotta expose some of the warts, as much as you do some of the good times. And my personal life, after the World Series in 96, 97, 98, first part of 99, it was in shambles. I was thrust into the spotlight. I was playing on a superstation every night. I couldn't go to dinner without getting recognized. With that fame and that notoriety, and of course the money, comes a ton of temptation. And I had a really tough time early on in my career keeping that temptation at arm's length. And I gave in, and it cost me, my marriage to Karen, my first wife. And it's just kind of going through all that stuff. And the reason why I was so open is because if a young high schooler who has aspirations of playing in the big leagues, a college kid, even a kid in the minor leagues, reads this book and I can steer him away from making some of the same mistakes that I did, then I think the book serves its purpose. And that was my goal. I have learned a ton over the years from my mistakes, and now, back then I didn't look forward to going home. Now I'm in a spot where I have a beautiful wife. I know she loves me, and I enjoy going home. I enjoy being a full-time father. I enjoy being a full-time husband. And the fact of the matter is that inability to want to go home when I was younger caused a lot of problems. Now I don't have that problem. I can keep all that stuff at arm's length because I'm happy where I am as a person with my relationship with my wife. And I hope that somebody somewhere along the line says, you know what, reading that really helped me out, really helped me keep those temptations at arm's length.
Yeah, you discuss a lot, Chipper, about the experience and the pressure, the struggles. But I also wonder for you, if you look back at the times in the mid-'90s, late '90s, when you were really young and what you were able to learn from it, do you almost feel like this was meant to happen? Is that safe to say, or no? Is that too much?
I think everything happens for. I think I'm where I am today because of some of those mistakes that I did. People ask me about regrets all the time. I have regrets over hurting some of the people that I loved. I hurt my parents deeply back then.
Talk about that a lot.
But I'm, everything kind of happens and leads up to where you are right now. And right now, I could not be happier. I'm in the perfect spot. People ask me all the time about getting back into baseball. You know what? I like being at home. I like my life. I like, playing golf with my buddies a couple times a week, taking the wife out to dinner a time or two a week, things like that. We take them for granted because, sometimes you guys get to do it all the time. When I was playing baseball, I never got to do it. So those are the things that I enjoy doing now.
Is there anything that, you talk also about the marketing deals and that you were able to, unfortunately, you lost some of them. When you started to see not just baseball, but you mentioned your parents and how your dad says, Chipper, I raised you so much to be respectful of women and all that. When you look back at that, how are you able to repair some of these things, whether it's your image or just with your parents?
Well, in the South, we call that a come to Jesus moment, I had more than a couple come to Jesus moments during the course of that period of time, and it just takes a conscious effort. And I think, once you make a conscious change in your life, people will see it. I'm on TV all the time, down there in the South, and people, there for a while I was quite cantankerous. I was hard to get along with, and then all of a sudden, now I have a smile on my face. Now I'm in a better place. Now I'm more cordial with people, congenial. People see that. You do it for long enough, and they go, you know what? He's making a fundamental change. And it took some of those come to Jesus moments for me to make a fundamental change.
I love how you go and you talk about how you looked at some of these great other players that your rivals, like a Derek Jeter or Roger Clemens, and you didn't really like them, but maybe disdain is too strong, but you didn't particularly like them. But then in the World Baseball Classic, I think it was 06, you're able to change the entire philosophy there. You all of a sudden, Derek says, we're going out tonight, let's go get dinner. You're in the clubhouse with Roger, you hit a home run, and Griffey's greeting you at the plate. Things began to change your way that you perceived other guys.
WBC, the World Baseball Classic, was one of the greatest baseball experiences of my life. Like you said, I had lost 2 World Series to Derek Jeter, lost the World Series to Roger Clemens. While being compared to Derek is a tremendous compliment to me, still doesn't mean I had to like playing second fiddle to him all that much. I wanted to see how he prepared. I wanted to see what kind of person he was. So when I walked into the clubhouse for the first time, I knew all these, we had A-Rod, we had Jeter, we had Clemens, we had Griffey, we had Johnny Damon. This is just a ton of really, really good players. So I just sat back and I kind of watched and kept my mouth shut. I was like a rookie again, and Jeter actually walked up to me and he said, hey, after we get done here, you're coming with me. We're going to go out to dinner tonight. And I was like, okay, that's awesome. So he took the first step, and at that point, I was like his little puppy, man. Wherever he went, I went. We hung out. We had a good time. We talked about things. I wanted to know what it was like to be a Yankee. He wanted to know certain things about what it was like to be a Brave. Both faces of a franchise. And arch nemesis. Throughout most of our time. In the big leagues. Here we are. Best buddies, and we had a ton in common. Whenever I came into town to play the Yankees in interleague play, he'd invite me over for dinner. Whenever, he came to Atlanta, you can't invite Derek Jeter to your house. You got to take him out somewhere, so you should just show off and whatnot. But but that was the kind of mutual respect that was developed right there in 2006 in the WBC.
And you've been able to, I hope, maintain some of these relationships.
100%. I think some of the best friends that I have on this planet, still playing or are retired. We see each other at various golf outings during the course of the off seasons and whatnot. We all try to scratch each other's back when it comes to each other's charities and causes and whatnot. So yeah, there's a ton of really good friendships forged in clubhouses.
I think I know we're a little short on time, but one of the key figures in the book is Bobby Cox, and I know it hurt you in 2010. You had the ACL, couldn't play for his last season. You know, he obviously he's not your father, but there were some fatherly things that he was able to give you, right, throughout your career.
100%. Bobby, I say in the book, is like that favorite grandfather. You know, you got that one grandfather that's kind of stern and by the book. Then you got that other grandfather that every time you shake his hand, he slips you a 20. That was Bobby Cox, you know. And it might not have been a 20, but it might have been a nugget of information. It might have been a story. I can't tell you how many times I sat down with Bobby and on the bench, you know, I get to the ballpark early and we'd sit down and I'd say, tell me a Mickey Mantle story. You know, I just wanted to know. I wanted to learn. I wanted him not to be Bobby Cox, the manager. I wanted him to be Bobby Cox, my buddy, for 5 minutes, you know. And those stories were invaluable to me, you know, and it kind of, I think will always be linked because we spent so much time together, you know, all the championships and whatnot, but one of my favorite people on the planet.
Absolutely. You know, he said the same thing about you, and you also say that he was stern, but as he got older, especially into your career, he got more and more sentimental.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, he would not hesitate, and some of you have seen it. You know, he'll stick a foot in your rear when you need it. You know, he's not going to embarrass you in front of everybody, but you get called into that principal's office. That's going to be a tough one. But yeah, right there at the end, nobody as intense as Bobby on the bench. But you could really see him last year and a half, where he really started to let more people in. Let the attention in. He always tried to keep that stuff at arm's length, keep the focus on the players. But you could really tell that it was starting to get to him there at the end of his career. He had some fun with it his last year.
You know, obviously Mickey Mantle, I'm so glad you brought him up again because he was always kind of in your head, I would imagine, with your father. At the end of a career, you talk about, well, you also say in the book, you really wanted to be known, your legacy as being a really clutch player. You hit the 2 walk-off homers to end your career. You break Mickey Mantle's RBI record. How has that sat with you as you've retired and gone away from baseball?
It's still hard to believe. You know, I think I passed Mickey in RBIs. We were out in San Diego, and, you know, 3 hours behind East Coast, and I couldn't wait to get on the phone with Dad after that game was over. And he answers the phone. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, you know, where they are, and I can tell he's choked up. He's like, the first thing he says, I can't believe you got more RBIs than my idol, Mickey Mantle. You know, and at that point, that's when it hits you what you've accomplished. You know, and you know, I don't by any means think that I'm in Mickey Mantle's class. That guy was a god here in this city, a tremendous player. I think if anybody says he's not the greatest switch hitter of all time, they're crazy. But I always said when I started playing, I wanted to be mentioned with 2 people when I got done, and that was Mickey Mantle and Eddie Murray. And if I can, you know, be lumped into that little threesome right there, then I would have had a pretty good career.
2 Hall of Famers, I think safe to say you're on your way, Chipper. So we thank you so much for coming. And the book is fantastic. Really can't recommend it enough. I'd love to open it up for questions.
Excuse me. As a player, which one of your peers did you admire on and off the field, not including any of your Brave teammates?
Oh, man. I would have to go back to Derek Jeter there. You know, it's hard playing in this city. It's very hard playing in this city. And for him to do it, you know, all he did was show up at the ballpark and be 1/9 of the equation that helped the Yankees win a ball club, win 5 championships during his stay here, and do it with relatively no waves, no fanfare. I mean, you never heard Derek being bad-mouthed, you know, in the media, no scandals or anything, and certainly nothing like what happened to me early on in my career. That, to me, is the most impressive thing. His poise, you know, on and off the field, his attitude with the media, which I'm sure cannot be easy here. We had 4 beat writers in Atlanta. He probably had 10, 15 times that amount here that he had to deal with every single day, and he did it with style and grace to the very end. I admire that a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you for being here. So, what was your what particular pitcher that you had a hard time hitting against? And also, if you were commissioner of the baseball, what would you do to fast pace the game? Because sometimes it has that tendency to be tedious. So, what would you do?
First question, pitcher. There were a lot of guys I struggled with, to be honest with you. But I would say the guy that I had the most trouble just putting the ball in play against was probably Roger Clemens. He had dominant stuff. Most guys that throw that hard, they get by on stuff, don't really worry about location. This guy could locate a number of different pitches, had tremendous angle, and when I say angle, a ball would come out of his hand and it would look low, and he would hit the bottom of the strike zone at the knees, or it would look outside and it'd be right on the corner. Those were things that made him tough to hit. Just to put the ball in play against Roger Clemens, I would come back to the dugout sweating. I mean, you just really had to work really hard. As far as speeding up pace of play, I don't really know that there's much you can do. Cut down on pitches in between innings, cut down on mound visits between catchers and pitchers. That seems to go on, forever. I know that they're starting to put a clock, in between pitches, in between innings. So all those things will help. But quite honestly, I can't think of anywhere I'd rather be for 3.5 hours than at the ballpark. But that's just me. You might not feel the same way.
Hi, Mr. Jones. My name is Kiara. I'm from Atlanta, so it's very nice to see you. What do you want to be remembered for in baseball for the city of Atlanta and then for baseball in general?
That's a good question. I think the title says it all. The best compliment for me is for somebody to talk about me and say that guy was a ball player. There are guys that play baseball and then there are ball players, and I want people to say, you know what, that guy was a ball player. You can sit here and say, hey, I want to be a winner, I want to be clutch, and yeah, I want to be all those things too. But at the end of the day, I want people to know that, when I get done, that I did it the right way, and have them respect me with that compliment right there, being a ball player. That for me is everything.
Chipper, can't thank you enough. Real pleasure for us to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's been great to be back in the Big Apple.
Go Yankees.
Go Yankees.